NHL and fantasy hockey seasons are in full swing, and we're not stopping the work to build a fantasy winner on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, which is why we got all of the angles from around the league covered. Wild, Laine, what's going on in the cage in Detroit, and of course, big time bets. Thank you for joining us for Tuesday's episode. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hockey heads, fantasy fanatics, and degenerate gamblers, welcome back inside the lab to your daily source for all of the above. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, and I'm joined, as always, by my distinguished co-host, Mr. Steele Roden. On this side of the microphone, it's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. Shout out, much love, salute. Thank you so much to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. This fantasy game ain't no joke, Mr. Roden, and we are knee-deep into research, takes, angles, and all of the fantasy news that you need to hopefully build that winner. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Get the season started with a big return on FanDuel, where new customers that place a $5 bet and hit get $150 back in bonus bets if that wager wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. A little bit of a mixed bag on today's episode, if you will, Steele. Minnesota Wild trade. Let's talk about it. This has a keeper dynasty fantasy lens. We're going to try and stay uber focused on that fantasy angle for y'all every single episode. Steele and I are going to be in the lab cooking up some new segments, some different ways to help you get to the top of that league. The Red Wings are in an interesting spot here. Patrick Laine, Kochetkov, lots to get to in course. Big time bets. Over to you, Steele. Let's talk about this Minnesota Wild deal, because I'm intrigued to hear what you have to say about it from a Wild perspective. But this is also an intriguing lens for a player who's going to have a really good amount of attraction in that keeper dynasty side of things.
Yeah, I think this was a massive trade for both teams in the scenario. Both Minnesota Wild and the Columbus Blue Jackets get what they want out of this situation. They acquire a young right shot, big defenseman in David Jiricek, 6'4", 205 pounds. A lot of teams out there would love to acquire a big, strong right shot-handed defenseman. So the Minnesota Wild get that on top of already the amount of prospects and young guys they have in their lineup, like Brock Faber, some of their prospects and draft picks that are in the system currently right now. Look, they're going to get a lot of opportunity on the blue line with some of the older guys and older pieces on this Minnesota Wild roster already. You look at guys like Jared Spurgeon, their captain, 35 years old, Zach Bogosian, 36, John Merrill, 32, guys who can play, Brodin as well, guys who are, getting into their mid to early 30s right now. They still have a lot of gas left in the tank, but the Minnesota Wild acquire and have been drafting some of these young, talented prospects who can use their speed, have the size, and really forming a strong defensive group for the future, along with their future guys in the top 6 forward group. So I like both. I like the outcome for both teams in this trade. Columbus Blue Jackets get a ton of draft picks, but this has fantasy implications for the Minnesota Wild acquiring David Jiricek, a guy who can be paired with Brock Faber, who can be paired with Jacob Middleton, who have been pretty good so far this season. So, again, a lot of teams would love to acquire a guy of this caliber. He's done pretty well, on the farm team for the Cleveland Monsters. He's done pretty well on the world stage as well when he plays, in the World Juniors for the Czech Republic. So he's been in the spotlight. He didn't want to be with the Columbus Blue Jackets anymore. They form a trade to send him elsewhere out to the Western Conference, and he has a chance and an opportunity to get some real good playing time with the Minnesota Wild. So I would keep an eye out for him. It could be as soon as a couple of weeks, maybe early as the new year when that comes around. But I would keep an eye on David Jiricek to get some playing opportunity with this Wild organization.
week to week as well, waiver wire. If
Yeah.
he is going to eat more minutes, which is one of his biggest, if not the main gripe in Columbus. He was averaging, I think, 11 minutes of ice time in the few games that he played. There wasn't a spot for him there right now. So if that does happen, and this is why we got to talk about it for that fantasy side of things, dynasty-wise, of course, a 6th overall draft pick who has already proven steel, and this is where it usually really translates to success at the NHL level. Not always, but usually. He was getting it done in the AHL. 15 goals, 60 points in 88 games in the AHL. Clearly ready to make the jump, in my opinion. So if he does get that ice time, if he does get to play along those the likes of the players that you just mentioned, this is very intriguing. This is the commitment of Billy G to really reinvigorate the youth on that blue line in Minnesota. They
Loving
used
it.
one of their first rounders in 2021. They selected that Carson Lambos kid. They also dealt Kevin Fiala to get Faber in 2022. So clearly, Bill Guerin has been very much committed. He addresses, Bogosian, Brodin, Merrill, Spurgeon, all very kind of reliable blue liners that you for sure need some of those kinds of caliber of players. But you also need to sprinkle in those talented fantasy young studs that are going to bring it. Lots of picks going back Columbus way, but in terms of what this is going to mean for a 6'4" puck mover who's got it done at the AHL level, hey, week to week coming up for some of those advantageous situations for the Wild, I'd be taking a serious look at this young D-man. Also, could you not like what is going on in Minnesota already this season? Then you sprinkle in that. He might be very fantasy relevant.
We're loving it, baby. We're loving it here.
Speaking of which, Patrick Laine, look, Kirby Doc, some of these players in Montreal, slow start from Matheson. There has been some big disappointments. However, Patrick Laine was a bright spot coming into this season in terms of what I thought personally he was going to bring to the offensive attack of the Canadiens. So I want to turn it over to you because he's going to be back. They move Waugh down to Roy, Waugh down to the Laval Rocket. They're clearing the way for Laine. So he is going to be back as early as tonight against the Islanders. Over to you for what you think is going to come from this. I'm not exactly rushing out there to add Laine, but it's something that I'd like to have the old finger on the pulse. I got to get that in there at least once a week.
At least once a week. But look, he will be traveling with the Montreal Canadiens on their upcoming 3-game road trip. It is unsure as of right now if he will be activated for that game on Wednesday night. But nonetheless, he will be with the team and he will be traveling. He was seen practicing with them in a regular contact jersey. And again, we just want to see him in that top 6 forward group. Cole Caufield has been lights out for this Montreal Canadiens team, really being the end all be all for them offensively with the goal scoring he's been able to do this season. So they need a guy, a 40-plus goal scorer who's done it in the past, and Patrick Laine to really jump in there. Again, it's a tough injury to come back from. Pretty serious in the preseason, but he's been working on it. He's been rehabbing. He's been practicing. And it would just be great. A guy who's dealt with so much adversity over the last, since he's pretty much entered the National Hockey League. Yeah. So we just want to see him back. Fantasy wise, I agree with you. I think it would be a little bit tough to go out there and pick him up right now because the Montreal Canadiens are still a very tough team. There's only a few pieces on there. Matheson, Caufield, Suzuki. There's some pieces that we can talk about waiver wire. Maybe we talk about Patrick Laine on the next waiver wire, see what he's able to do in the first couple of games back. But keep an eye on those guys that we just mentioned, David Jiricek, both Patrick Laine for next week, if they're getting some good opportunity and if they're activated.
And I would also say this, considering how good Caufield and actually Steele, one of those guys and I think this was one of those ones I should have spoken to you about off air. We should do one of those overlooked fantasy standouts so far because Nick Suzuki has 24 points in 24 games, 53 shots on net, block shots, 21, 23 hits. He's having a great fantasy season that's getting buried by how bad that team has been. So if you think about Caufield and Suzuki's fantasy value, and then you add the wrinkle that Patrick Laine can bring when he is healthy, that's going to be a pretty hard line to deal with. The rest of the team, the goaltending, we don't have time to talk about that. But if Laine does return to this lineup soon, and that line forms the chemistry that we thought they were going to at the start of the season before he got hurt, this could be huge for the Patrick Laines, even the Mathesons on the power play of the world in terms of a fantasy boost. We're going to keep covering fantasy angles every episode, Monday through Friday, every single week until that cup gets lifted. Big time bets at the end of every episode, including today for a loaded 10-game Tuesday board. We'll also talk about the Detroit Red Wings right around the break and something else that I'm already forgetting about, but it's Kochetkov as well. There you go. That's why you shout out the graphics on YouTube. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Right now, you can win 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports all over the U.S. and the best place to get real money in sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. Prize Picks, Jack Hughes, over under 4 shots on goal, Panarin, more than 1 assist. You know what it is on Prize Picks. You can get it all. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get 50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's downloading the app today and using code LOCKEDONNHL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip and I appreciate all that love and support you show us. Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes. Again, we could not be doing this without all of our listeners out there. So thank you so much again for all that love and support. We really do appreciate it. This has been a tough week personally for my fantasy hockey teams, Flip. I have been scraping the bottom of the barrel in the goaltender apartment right now. It has been difficult. Cam Talbot just recently got injured in that Vancouver Canucks game. Alex Lyon has also been just moved to the IR, injured reserve for the Detroit Red Wings. So both number 1 and number 2 goaltenders for the Red Wings are currently out. I saw you active on the waiver wire early, getting Ville Husso. So you were out there doing God's work in the fantasy hockey realm if you need a goaltender. I mean, Kochetkov has been out for me. It has been a brutal couple of weeks in the goalie department, but we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about both goaltenders on the Red Wings. Also, Kochetkov coming back from concussion protocol and coming back from concussion. But the Detroit Red Wings, I mean, Talbot's injured. Alex Lyon's injured. I don't know. I mean, you go out there and get Ville Husso. Maybe they bring in Jack Campbell. I know he was brought in the offseason. I don't remember if they waived him, if he's still down in the AHL. But regardless, that could be an option for them if all things go south once again.
And if not, right now it's looking like Sebastian Kosa, recalled from Grand Rapids on an emergency basis. Look, this is a 15th overall draft pick a couple of years ago by this Detroit team, but they also have a lot more time, energy, and money invested, and mostly money in Ville Husso. He is going to get the look to be the goaltender right now in Detroit. So we're not going to speculate on how long these injuries will be for Talbot and for Lyon, because right now we just don't know a ton. I believe it was Derek Lalonde saying that they're going to get a better idea of it over the next 24 hours. So, but for now, Ville Husso, in my opinion, Steele, was one of those goaltenders that has all the ability in the world and all of that fantasy intrigue because of that 1.5 really good seasons in St. Louis. But it's, for me, it's between the ears, somewhat similarly to Jack Campbell, actually, in terms of confidence. But right now, that's why I had to run out and add Ville Husso, because the Detroit Red Wings actually haven't been that bad offensively when they've needed to be. They are allowing the 5th most shots against in the NHL. That blue line, I think, needs to tighten it up. I haven't watched a ton of Red Wings hockey, so I'm not going to say I know exactly what ails them, but if they don't tighten up those 31-plus shots on net, I am not going to hang on to Ville Husso fantasy-wise longer than this week just to have a look. But it's a number 1 goaltender right now, de facto or otherwise. So Talbot out, that hurts. He's been playing well. Lyon, actually, for the most part, has been pretty solid. 4-4-0, 2.74 goals against, and a 9.11 save percentage. Right now, Husso, you got to be taking a look, because the Red Wings are still a bubble team, and that does bring some value.
Yeah, all we know as of right now is that Alex Lyon and Cam Talbot will not play in Tuesday's matchup. So they will be out at least 1 game, regardless of the fact that he was moved to the IR. It doesn't, there's nothing implicating that he will be out longer than that. It just says As of right now, the most recent update, both Alex Lyon and Cam Talbot will miss Tuesday's game, so they could be back for the next one after that. So Ville Husso is definitely a good pickup.
And
Scott Wedgwood,
just to jump in though, Steele, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, complete your point. You were going to say something about Wedgwood. That's my bad.
I was just going to say Scott Wedgwood, Eustace Noonan, Alex Nedeljkovic, Spencer Knight, some of these goaltenders out there. If you are struggling with some of the goaltender injuries right now, those are some of the guys who are who are rostered below 15% and are definitely available. Casey DeSmith as well as one of them for the Dallas Stars. So there are a few options out there, but again, these are guys you're going to be picking up for a night and dropping the next almost immediately.
Yeah, most definitely. My bad, pal. There's a little bit of a lag there on this Wi-Fi situation, so I hope it's not too bad for the listeners. But Boston, Ottawa, Colorado, Buffalo, and Philly. The next 5 games for this Red Wings club. So kind of a mixed bag there, but also not one that exactly screams overly tough, especially until you get into the Philly and Toronto situation. Boston, beatable. Yeah. Ottawa for sure. Colorado, Buffalo. Kind of liking those 4 games here for the Detroit Red Wings for the most part. But when 2 goaltenders go down, Steele, and, you might not exactly scream a solid duo of Talbot and Lyon, this could, aside from fantasy, this could be really detrimental to the Detroit Red Wings if Husso or Kosa can't hold it down here. We'll keep our eyes peeled on this situation, though, because this is going to be a little bit of a goalie carousel. However, goalie situation in Carolina. What do you think about Kochetkov coming back? Obviously, very important for GMs who probably drafted this goalie, right there in the middle rounds in terms of fantasy drafts.
Yeah, it's been pretty much the same light for the Carolina Hurricanes this season with goaltenders. Frederik Andersen goes down. He was out 8 to 12 weeks, I believe it was. Could be back in the new year. Then Kochetkov gets injured. He comes back. He gets injured again. Gets injured once again with a concussion, and he will now be back and ready to go. He did practice Monday, and he will be ready for their next game tonight, Tuesday. So again, guys or GMs out there, anybody who picked up Spencer Martin, it's been a little bit of a tough stretch for you. Back-to-back big losses against the Florida Panthers. Flip one of them.
Perfect.
Nevertheless, yep. Kochetkov will be back here ready to save your teams and save the Carolina Hurricanes from this small little skid of theirs. We're going to come back after the break, though. Flip, you got anything left to say about Kochetkov returning?
All I was going to say was with Husso, it's obviously a lot more risky for clear reasons. I mentioned the shots on goal. Almost the opposite for Kochetkov. Better caliber goaltender, in my opinion. The injuries are a concern. But when you look at the Carolina Hurricanes, they're at the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of being a neat and tidy defensive group on that blue line. Second best in terms of shots against that they are perennially. That's a Rod Brindamore kind of trait. 25 shots against per game for this Carolina Hurricanes team. A lot better of a situation to succeed for Kochetkov. So I could see him catching fire here. This is a much better Carolina team. Just wanted to get that in there before we get the bets.
Yeah, most likely not on the waiver wire. I'm not quite clear what his percentage is as of right now. But if he is out there, definitely go pick him up. I mean, yeah, on Yahoo right now, he's at 83% roster.
He's going to be owned, yeah.
I would believe ESPN, he's going to be owned out there, so it's going to be tough to get him. Still hold on to Spencer Martin as he will be the backup goaltender. But nevertheless, some goaltender injury updates for all of you out there. We're going to come back after the break. Big time bets. We're absolutely killing it out there this week with the big time bets. Lots of games on Tuesday night. We're getting after it. Where you can place those bets, that's FanDuel.com. Get ready to take the NFL action by storm with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need in one place to place those live bets on the NFL all at the same time. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place those bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. We're getting after it with the same game parlays. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And once again, thank you so much to everybody out there who has been tuning in to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod, making it your first listen every single day. Continue to share with your friends and family. Hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip and I appreciate all that love and support we've been receiving over the countless years we've been doing this, especially over this off season and lead countless years, countless seasons. We're getting close to our 3-year anniversary of doing this podcast.
Yeah, hey.
It's coming in the new year, end of January. We're gonna have to do something special out
Hey.
there.
I'm seeing some interest from some of the listeners that perhaps maybe we need a Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast live event. I don't know if people are still listening to today's episode,
Yes,
but
sir.
if there's any interest in joining Stealing out for a couple of pints at the pub, perhaps in the GTA, hit us in the comments, hit us in the DMs. Only if you've been successful with your fantasy teams in our advice. No, I'm kidding. But we'll do something special for our 3-year anniversary. Speaking of which, I think I should just, if future notice, hand it over to you to start these bets. Usually you throw it to me. Right now I'm following you, good sir. So where are you looking? 10 games. I found this to be a bit of a tricky board, to be honest. I've got 3 picks that I really like, but it took me a little bit.
Thank you for saying that.
Got there, if you agree.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. There's lots of games to choose from, but I really didn't like a lot of these matchups going into Tuesday. I mean, the Oilers Golden Knights, very tricky. Blues and Jets, you could favor the Jets, but the money line odd is not going to be great. Kraken, Hurricanes. I mean, if I'm going with 2 easy ones, but the odds aren't going to be great, it's Panthers versus Penguins and Capitals versus Sharks. Other than that, some very tricky situations. However, the one matchup, the one game I'm targeting that I really, really like for a same game parlay, it's the Colorado Avalanche Buffalo Sabres game. And that's where all 3 of my picks come from right now. First pick of the night, I'm taking the Avalanche on the puck line, minus 1.5 at plus 168. The Avalanche have dominated the Buffalo Sabres over the last 10 games. They are 8-2-0 in their last 10. 7 of those 8 wins have been 2 or more goals. The puck line is great here. I'm feeling the great odd at plus 168 as well. I'm parlaying that with my 2 other picks. McKinnon 2+ points. He's been a little bit not himself over the last 5 games. Only 2 points for the Nate Dog. That is about to change in a game where they score a lot of goals and dominate this Eastern Conference team. I'm going with the 2+ points. What he does best with his playmaking ability, using his speed, get into areas where he can thread the needle seamlessly to his teammates. And I'm parlaying that with my lock of the night, Mikko Rantanen, anytime goal at plus 135. McKinnon, he's a playmaker. He uses his speed to get to the puck to his open teammates. Mikko Rantanen, he is a goal scorer. 15 goals in 25 games so far this season. Those are the 3 picks. Those are the lock of the night. Avalanche puck line. Mikko Rantanen, anytime goal is the lock. And Nathan McKinnon, 2+ points.
Well, then why don't I just slide right along here with the same angle and take the over in this Colorado-Buffalo game. I'm going to not back off of this angle. The Buffalo Sabres are a team, to me, every time I see them match up against another team that's offensively inclined, especially one like the Colorado. Look, if you're going out there to get Scott Wedgwood as some sort of stopgap, you know that there's some issues in their own end and confidence-wise in terms of stopping pucks. But that's good for over bets, baby. And I'm going to go back to also, if you look at these teams kind of last 6 or 7 games apiece, they have been involved in some crooked number games. And I think digging into this one, I believe the last few between them have actually stayed under the number. But this is one of those ones where I'm just going to lean to it going over. The total has gone over in 5 of Colorado's last 6 games in Buffalo. That one I'm liking as well. First pick, Colorado Buffalo over. Second pick, I'm keeping it simple. You alluded to it. This Florida Panthers team has awoken in a big way. 2 big wins over the Carolina Hurricanes. 2 decisive victories. I believe they scored 12 goals in 2 games, right? 6-3 and 6-zip, I believe, is what they just put on the Carolina Hurricanes. A good team. I know it was Spencer Martin and Peretz or whoever was in there. It doesn't really matter. Florida on the road into Pittsburgh. This is just, it might be too good to be true, Steele, and I might have to lay it down to minus 180. Florida is also 6-2-2 in their last 10 against Pittsburgh. I'm keeping it simple. Florida, money line, lock of the night, though. This one's for you, my friend, my co-host, my brother. Vancouver on the road into the Minnesota Wild. Vancouver has been bad against the Minnesota Wild over their last 10, to the tune of Minnesota has 8-1-1 record in their last 10. They are playing well. They're adding very interesting pieces to the blue line. They are buyers. We said this a couple of weeks ago. They got to be buyers, and I know it's a young player, but this is going to invigorate that locker room. These are good things. They're intangibles that you have to look at from a betting perspective. Vancouver, kind of hanging on for dear life, in my opinion, Steele. You know what? I've been clear about them, and I know they have wins in 4 out of their last 5. I think they're an overachieving bunch. So all of those angles play into my lock of the night. Mini on the money line. Let's hammer it at home, baby. I think they continue their dominance against this Vancouver club.
I'm loving the confidence here, and you have persuaded me to add that into the parlay.
I hope that doesn't
a separate
cook you.
one. It's going to be a separate one, but I'm going to add it into all of those 3 picks of yours. I like all 3 of your picks as well. I really like that targeting of this Colorado Avalanche Buffalo Sabres match. Those are all the picks. Those are the lock of the nights. And thank you once again for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day, making sure it's your first listen over the holiday season, Christmas morning, New Year's Eve. You want to be tuning in all day long. For your second listen, though, you got to make sure you go check out the Locked On NHL podcast. The link is in the description below, so you don't have to go searching for it. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day from both Flip and I. We wish you good luck with your bets, your weekly matchups, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.